Hello everybody, we are back with part 2 of exploring a particular shelf. By the way, a quick update, it's about 2 weeks since I filmed the introduction to part 1, and the shelf is still propped up against the wall because I haven't fixed it yet. So there might end up being a part 3 whilst I decide to do a slightly more severe rework of the whole display situation. Part 1, if you haven't seen it, will be above now on a card. Have a little look through that if you want to get up to speed. But essentially, shelf go broken, Battle of Midway display shelf. We left off with a Douglas Dauntless, and we'll be picking up here from pretty much straight after. And again, apologies for the slight audio problems. I have hopefully worked that out since, but obviously not in time for this. Enjoy! Similar to the previous aircraft, this is an American dive bomber, but it is the Vought Vindicator. This is the Special Hobby stroke MPM tooling. This is it as released by Special Hobby, and I have made one of these before, which has long since gone, and it was an absolute pig. It just did not fit together properly, and it might have been because I was a teenager and not experienced with this sort of kit, but this one was notably different. Looking at the sprue map, it was clearly a different tool, and it turns out, from what I managed to deduce, it's a combination of the MPM and Special Hobby tools somehow combined. Either that or they kept the wing bit and changed the fuselage, something like that. So some of it is as per the previous kit I made, and some of it is new. This has very, very faint red spots on the roundels, which is, as per some photos from the Battle of Midway, this is one of the options from the kit. I've done very little to it other than just assemble it. That's another thing that the other one didn't have. It's got a little window down here, which of course is necessary for being able to aim and drop bombs. But I remember the other one didn't have that. Bit spindly on the old bomb front and the bomb racks and fitting that. But if it weren't for the varnish-tainted paintwork, this would take pride of place. It's a very ungainly-looking thing, but with a better paint finish, I would be happy to display that with some of my newer stuff. Okay, I've had to stop the turntable for this one for obvious reasons. This is a bit of a big girl. It is an unfinished Academy PBY Catalina, and it's actually the last kit that I made before switching to an airbrush, and is one of the reasons why I switched to an airbrush. So this is, I think, the last of the Midway kits that I finished, which would place it at about 2022 in time for the 80th anniversary. But I'd started it before then, and Academy later confirmed that they were releasing a Battle of Midway variant of this tool, which came complete with decals. You may notice this doesn't have any decals. I just varnished the space where they would be. Essentially, I don't have any spare. I thought I did, and it ended up on the shelf because I wanted to get rid of it from just clogging up the desk and things like that. So it's still very much a work in progress, and realistically, probably will never be finished. The kit is okay. It is not the best. The engine nacelles, from what I understand, are too small, which explains why they look a bit weird. Being the PBY5A amphibious version, it has undercarriage down, a little bit spindly, but it takes one metric ass ton of weight inside to be able to sit here. This is very much a kit that I would recommend to anyone making with the wings up. Obviously the wings up, the wheels up, just to save on having to weight it. It's to the point that it feels unsafe holding it. It is that heavy. I might put it on some scales at some point, see if I can get you a reading for it. But yeah, she a big girl. She's put on the pounds. And you can see that my attempt at the zinc chromate on the floats looks too bright, too green, a little bit comic-y. Should probably tone it down at some point. But like I say, I never finished it. And I'd rather just see somebody release a new Catalina, because I don't think there is actually a good enough one for this project, to be honest. Definitely needs an airbrush or an aerosol, because painting this thing by a brush just took forever. I'd also yet to decide whether this was going to have depth charges or a torpedo slung under the starboard wing. Probably a torpedo. Just never got around to it. More Japanese now, and more Hasegawa as well. This is the Jake. It was supplied with a catapult, and I did assemble the catapult. I do still have it somewhere, I think. Not in this house, but I think I've still kept it. Again, more reconnaissance from the Japanese for the Battle of Midway, and I believe it was a Jake that was the Tonne's number 4 aircraft. So the one which basically resulted in the Japanese getting their buttocks handed to them by completely misidentifying and then failing to clarify that what they'd seen was in fact a major carrier force, which ultimately resulted in the confusion aboard the decks of the carriers and subsequent surprise attack as they slowed down into the wind to launch their aircraft, which were delayed. But enough random history. This kit's fine. Again, it's a bit old. It's just old Hasegawa. The interior is not great, and you can't really see in it, mostly because it's dusty, but yeah, it's all right. Right, we are nearly there. The shelf is nearly empty. This one decided to fall off. It's the one most affected by gravity, apparently, and is the main reason why I decided to do this video anyway, because, well, I don't want this one smashed. This is an Airfix B5N2 Kate. Due to an admin error, I have ended up with more Kates than I was expecting. I've made the Hasegawa one, and I have one to make. I've made the Airfix one, and I have one to make. I think I might have another one somewhere as well. This kit was one of those kits. I made this when it was first released by Airfix. I will hopefully have remembered to put whatever date that was on the screen. It was one of those kits that seriously changed my opinion of Airfix. It was an absolute pleasure to build, and I got a little bit excited expecting them to announce something like a Val to go with it, or maybe even a Jake or a Roof, or just something different that's Japanese, because a Zero, a Val and a Kate, well, that's your basic Japanese trio, and they did the Zero, they did the Kate, and then didn't bloody bother with the Val. So now we're all stuck with the Dragon one. So come on, Airfix, pull your finger out, get more Japanese stuff done. It's something a little bit different. And if this is anything to go by, then you absolutely know how to do it. This is also an aircraft that confirms Airfix don't just make aircraft that they can scan, because there are only 2 Kates preserved. Neither of them are intact or even complete, and you definitely cannot go and laser scan them. You might as well just look at a big pile of scrap. So, come on, Airfix, more of this. Also, I really like that the torpedo doesn't have to be stuck in. It can just be easily pulled out, displayed with it separately. If you've got a trolley for it or something like that, fantastic. Possibly the best performing aircraft of the entire Second World War, the Douglas Devastator excelled at every job that it was given. For anyone who doesn't know, I would advise looking up how funny that is, because it's quite hilarious. This is the AZ/Admiral Douglas Devastator, and it nearly went out the window several times. It is an awful kit. The undercarriage legs were too long, and I've had to chop them down, and now they're too short. I don't think the canopy is necessarily the right shape either. It seems a little bit too rounded. The wings didn't want to fit, the interior didn't want to go together, and the instructions were nonsense. This is an example of why limited run kits can be the bane of any existence, and it's a shame because this is an aircraft that really needs better representation. It's an important aircraft. It was a good aircraft when it was first designed, and it had a reputation for being shot down, crashing, or generally completely failing to do anything useful during the war. So it has a reputation. We'll just put it that way. There is a Veilom kit available, and I didn't build that one because I don't trust them, and because the canopy is absolutely the wrong shape for that one. But this one is rather well detailed. It certainly looks the part inside. It needed somebody better to make it. It needed somebody to know how tall the wheels needed to be and what needed to be done to make it look less rubbish. Also note how there are plenty of spaces where I didn't use any filler, which is perfectly standard for me at the time. It's just laziness. It's just full-blown laziness. But yeah, it's not bad for what it is. Probably going to end up out the window, though. Now, this is a bit sneaky because neither of these aircraft are in the colours of the Battle of Midway. However, they have made their way onto the shelf. They are, of course, both Zeros. Some would say that the Mitsubishi Zero was the best looking aircraft of the Pacific Theatre. I would agree with them. In fact, I don't know if anyone else has said that, but I'm definitely saying that. I think they're absolutely beautiful. One of them is Airfix, and one of them is Tamiya. Now, it's quite easy to tell them apart. The Tamiya one has its canopy open. There we go, simple as that. It is incredible. It's genuinely one of the best kits I've ever made. This was made very, very soon before my switch to an airbrush, and it's actually one of the main regrets that I have, that I still used enamel paints which have tainted this otherwise immaculate aircraft, and that the fine detail doesn't pop as much as it should because it was brush painted instead. Now, the Airfix one, with its much heavier detail, much thicker panel lines, has survived quite well, but also the varnish has tainted it in a way that I actually quite like. It's given it a sort of faux panel lining effect. It's interesting. Oh, notice the blue. I like the blue. Oh, look at that. Blue. Blue. Metallic blue. Everywhere. Metallic blue. It's fantastic. If I remember rightly, I'm sure somebody will be able to tell, the Airfix one uses the spare decals from a Hasegawa one, I think. I think that's the way around that I did, because I've made a Hasegawa one as well. I'm pretty sure this is not one that came, not an option that came with the kit. I could make Zeros like I could make Dauntlesses, just a whole shelf full of them, but there's not that much variation between it. I do have another Tamiya one to make, and I do have another Airfix one to make, so stay tuned. Let me know what colours you want me to make this in as well. You've basically got two choices, this or with green on top. But I thought I'd show these off. They're on the shelf anyway, and particularly the Tamiya one, that's a kit to pick up where possible. And finally, we have Yankee Doodle. Now, again, I've had to stop the rotisserie. It's not really a rotisserie. Would it count as a rotisserie? Comment below the definition of rotisserie. No, we've come to a B-17E Flying Fortress in ad hoc, shall we say, Pearl Harbor camouflage, as in the aircraft were stationed at Pearl Harbor and they grabbed any colour that they could and tried to camouflage their aircraft, making it extremely distinctive. This is an Academy kit, which lacks interior detail, but honestly I don't mind. It was made, again, fairly close towards the end of this project, so it's one of the better aircraft on the shelf. The number 3 has been crafted simply by just cutting a number 8 or something similar, as all of these decals were from my spares. Once again, we have a case of enamel varnish dirtying the paint to an extent that really, really bugs me. But, as something a bit different, and something that is very eye-catching, I quite enjoy this kit. It is a little bit too big for the shelf, and has to go at a weird angle, but I would definitely recommend this as a cheap, effective way of making a Flying Fortress. If interested in the colour scheme, there are aftermarket decals which I probably should have bought, but one day I would like to do justice to this, pre-shade it properly, make it look much more realistic, and maybe that will feature on the channel at some point. Now, in case you hadn't noticed, I'm recording this in the daylight, and the sun has decided it wants to burst through the window and completely destroy the lighting that I've set up in this room. Unfortunate, but convenient anyway, as that is the last aircraft on my shelf. So, thank you very much for watching. Well done for making it this far through the video. You can become a channel member if you want. You can like and subscribe if you want, but don't worry if you don't. I just appreciate you watching. As this was something a little bit different, please let me know with a comment below if you want to see this sort of thing again. I've got a lot of aircraft on my shelf. I am going to be having a clear out, so it's not too big an issue for me to film and ramble about them whilst I'm having said clear out. But if nobody watches it, then fine. There'll be no comments because nobody's made it to the end of the video, and they'll all go in the bin, and you'll have to feel guilty for not watching it. Although, because you're not listening, you wouldn't know to feel guilty, unless, of course, you're watching this in the future. And, oh, well then, at that point, enough of this nonsense. Thank you, and goodbye, and hopefully see you again another time.